The dress costs 4 million won. The wine costs the rest of a woman's life. Zola Mensa has carried a full glass of 2011 Burgundy across the floor of Hwin 214 times. She has never spilled, not once. Not the night the heating failed and the staff served in coats. Not the night the violinist fainted between the first and second course. Not the night a deputy minister put his hand on her wrist and she walked away from his fingers with the glass still level as a held breath. 214 Fridays. 214 perfect arcs. Tonight, the glass leaves her hand. It is 8:47 in the evening in Seongbuk-gu, Seoul. A district where the street lamps do not buzz because someone pays for them not to. The restaurant has no sign. The restaurant has no website. The restaurant has 6 tables and a door that does not open for names it does not already know. At the center table, Baek Hyun-soo is reaching for his own water glass. He always refills it himself. It is the only small task in the world he refuses to delegate. And across from him sits Ha-eun in a dress the color of a bruise 3 days old. The dress is from a Paris atelier whose appointments are inherited. The dress is 4 million won. The dress is about to learn the color of a cote de nuit at room temperature. The kitchen door swings open at the wrong angle. 3 degrees too wide. 3 degrees that have never happened in this room before and never will again. Zola steps through. The glass is in her right hand. Her right hand is steady. Her right hand is not the problem. The problem is older. Before this sentence ends, I want you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments which city, which country, which kitchen you are listening from tonight. And if this is the first time the voice of K-Love Afro-Korean has found you, then this is your sign. Subscribe, like the video. Ring the bell so the next story finds you the moment the lights go down. Now, stay with me because the next thing that happens in this room has been waiting 11 years to happen. The arc is slow. Anyone who later swears in a sworn statement that it was an accident will be lying for a reason. The wine crosses the air between Zola and the table the way a sentence crosses a courtroom. Deliberate, audible, irreversible. It lands on the bias seam of the dress, at the precise diagonal where the Paris atelier sewed the silk against itself to hold the line of Ha-eun's hip. The stain blooms. It blooms the shape of a country. The room does not gasp. Hwin does not gasp. Hwin waits. And here is the second violation, the one that will matter more than the first. Zola does not lower her eyes. She does not bow. She does not perform the small, practiced choreography of apology that has kept her invisible for 6 years on this floor. She looks Baek Hyun-soo in the face, which, in this room, is a thing staff are not permitted to do. And Baek Hyun-soo, who has not turned his head sharply in 17 years, tilts his head 1 millimeter to the left. He says, "You hum. When you pour the water. You hum a song. I have heard it before." Zola says nothing. She lets the silence be the answer. Somewhere behind her, the kitchen door is already swinging back into place, 3 degrees the other way, correcting itself the way a record corrects after a needle skip. Somewhere outside, on the quiet street, 2 men in dark coats step out of 2 parked cars at the same moment, because at Hwin, within 90 seconds of any disturbance, the exits are no longer exits. Somewhere, 11 years deep, a Thursday in March is opening its eyes. Zola lowers her chin 1 careful inch and says, in a voice the room has never heard from her, pitched not to the empty center of the table, but to the man at it, "I will have it cleaned immediately." She does not mean the dress. The maitre d', a man called Pyo, moves first. He moves because his job is to make weather visible to no one. He is at the table in 4 steps, a folded white napkin already in his hand. His apology a low coastal murmur in the most formal honorific Korean possesses, directed at the empty center of the table, never at Hwin's face, never at Bayek's. He says the thing one says. He gestures Zola toward the kitchen with the gentlest authority in the building. She does not go. Hwin has not yet looked down at the dress. This is the detail that will matter later. A woman who has spent her adult life inside dresses of this caliber knows, before the wet reaches her skin, exactly how much fabric has dyed. She does not need to look. She is looking instead at Zola. She is looking at Zola the way a cat looks at a thing that has made a noise inside the wall. Beck refills his own water glass. He does it without breaking his gaze. The pitcher is heavy. Cut crystal, check, the household keeps 4. And he tilts it with the small, unbeautiful economy of a man who has not been served water by another human being since he was 11 years old. The water rises in his glass. 3/4? He sets the pitcher down. He has not looked at Pyo. He has not looked at the dress. He has not looked at Hwin. Pyo see. His voice is the same volume as the room. Leave her. Pyo bows out 3 steps, the way Pyo was taught. Beck says again, as if it is the first time, as if the words have just occurred to him on the walk between one breath and the next. You hum when you pour the water. You hum a song. I have heard it before. Zola hears, inside her own skull, the sound of a hotel kitchen in Accra 11 years and 2 months ago. A stainless steel counter, the air thick with the smell of fennel and palm oil. A young man humming low into the rim of a coffee cup because their mother used to hum it into the rim of a baby's bottle, and he had never quite stopped. She hears her brother, Kofi Mensah, 29 years old, 6'1", a diamond ledger zipped into the inside pocket of his jacket, alive for another 40 minutes. She says evenly, "It is a Twi lullaby, sir. My mother sang it. Forgive me." Beck does not smile. Beck has not smiled at a person in a public room in 19 years, but something inside his face, behind the polite stone of it, shifts. It is the look of a man who has just heard a number he was not supposed to hear. Your mother. He pauses. Where? Kumasi, sir? And before Kumasi. The question is wrong. The question is wrong in the way only a question from a man who already knows the answer can be wrong. He is not asking where her mother lived. He is asking where the song traveled. He is asking whether the song has been in any other kitchen he should remember. Zola says, Accra, sir, for a time. A muscle in Bayek's jaw does the smallest thing a muscle can do and still be doing something. Behind Zola, in the soft black margin of the room, a man she has never seen before steps quietly out of the service alcove and stands with his hands folded in front of him. He is not staff. He is wearing the suit of a man who is paid to stand near other men. He is not looking at Zola. He is looking at the back of Bayek's head, waiting for an instruction. Beck lifts one finger from the table. The man steps back into the alcove. Not yet. You will return to the kitchen, Beck says, to the empty center of the table. You will not be dismissed tonight. Pyosi will see that the dress is replaced from my account. Madame Hwin will accept a car home. He pauses, and now he does look up, and his eyes meet Zola's, and Zola understands, with a clarity that arrives in her chest the way a key fits a lock she has been carrying in her coat pocket for 11 years, that he is not letting her go. He is keeping her where he can find her again. Friday, he says. Next Friday, you will pour my water. Yes, sir. She walks. The kitchen door swings open at exactly the correct angle this time. Behind her, Hwin has finally looked down at her dress and seen what a country looks like on silk. In the kitchen, Pyo will not meet Zola's eyes. Pyo, who has met her eyes every Friday for 6 years, who once told her in a corridor that her plating of the amuse-bouche was the only thing in the room that did not bore him. Pyo cannot look at her now. Pyo has understood something Zola has not yet said aloud. Pyo is afraid. That is the first thing she has won tonight, and she will not waste it. You should know, before we go any further, what the song is. It is 4 bars long. It is in Twi. It does not have a title in any language because lullabies sung by mothers into baby bottles do not require titles. The first bar climbs. The second bar settles. The third bar asks a question. The fourth bar answers the question with a name. The name is Kofi, which in Twi means a boy born on a Friday, and the lullaby was sung to a boy born on a Friday by a woman who would die in the 5th year of his life, and that boy grew up to be a man who hummed the song into coffee cups in kitchens, because some songs cannot be unhummed once a mother has put them inside you. Zola Mensa was born on a Sunday. Her name in Twi means quiet. Their mother had a sense of humor. In the 11 years between the Thursday in March and tonight, this is what Zola did. She buried her brother in a cemetery on a hill above Accra that overlooks the road to the airport. She buried him without a body. The body was never released. The Ghanaian police file on the conference room at the Kempinski Hotel ran to 4 pages and concluded that Kofi Mensah, diamond merchant, 29 years of age, had departed the country on a flight to Antwerp on the evening of the same Thursday and had failed to subsequently maintain contact with his family. A phrasing so smooth that Zola recognized, even at 25, the fingerprints of a man with the budget to write police files in someone else's hand. The Kempinski's CCTV from that morning had a 16-minute gap. The deputy manager of the Kempinski received 3 weeks later a transfer to a sister property in Mauritius. Zola did not need to learn anything else. Zola had already learned the only thing. She enrolled in a culinary program in Paris because the man who walked into the conference room had been Korean, and there was, at the time, no school in Accra that taught the kind of restaurant work performed in the kind of rooms that man inhabited. She did not study Korean cuisine. She studied French service. She studied the choreography of invisibility, how to fold a napkin so the diner does not register that a napkin has been folded, how to clear a plate so the conversation does not pause, how to refill a water glass without the rim of the pitcher ever touching the rim of the glass. She studied being unseen by people for whom unseenness is a cost of admission. She learned Korean on the side. She learned it the way one learns a route to a house one intends to enter. She learned the honorifics first, because the honorifics would keep her in the room. She learned the slang second, because the slang would tell her when she was being talked about. She did not learn the small talk. She would not need the small talk. She moved to Seoul on a Tuesday in the autumn of her 31st year. She took a position at a hotel restaurant in Gangnam for 14 months. She moved laterally to a private members club in Jongno for 9. She moved laterally again with a recommendation in a sealed envelope from a sommelier whose discretion she had earned over 23 months of pouring his Riesling without ever once mentioning the woman in his car, to a place called Hwin. Hwin did not advertise. Hwin was not reviewed. Hwin's door did not open for names it did not already know. Hwin had a Friday night standing reservation, table 3, for a man named Baek Hyun-soo, who had walked into a conference room at the Kempinski Hotel in Accra on a Thursday in March, 11 years earlier, and walked out alone. In 6 years on the floor, Zola never poured Beck's water. Beck refilled his own water glass. It was, the staff said, the only small task in the world he refused to delegate. Zola pretended she did not know why. She knew why. She had read it in a single line of a court filing she should not have had access to, in a fluorescent-lit room in The Hague. On a Wednesday, she had taken off from a job she had not yet quit. The filing concerned an unrelated matter, a sanctions dispute in West Africa, and Bayek's name appeared in it exactly once, in a footnote, in a deposition taken under conditions of anonymity. The deponent had said, "Mr. Beck does not permit other hands to touch what he drinks. It is the only consistent superstition I observed in him. He learned it, he told me once, from a man in Accra who had tried, and failed, to poison him at breakfast. Tried and failed. Kofi had tried." Zola read the footnote 4 times. Then she folded the paper, and she folded her face, and she walked out of the room in The Hague, and she went home to her studio apartment in Mapogu, and she sat on the floor with her back to the radiator. And for the first time in 7 years, she let herself hum the lullaby out loud. All 4 bars, the climb, and the settle, and the question, and the name. Then she stopped humming because the humming was no longer for grief. The humming was for use. For 6 years on Hwin's floor, she did not pour Beck's water. She poured the water of every other man at every other table, and she hummed under her breath the 4 bars of a Twi lullaby a woman in Kumasi had sung into a baby bottle, and she waited for Beck Hyun-soo's ear, which had been trained over a lifetime to register a single anomalous sound in a quiet room, to finally turn. Tonight, it turned. The wine, you should understand, was never the point. The wine was the excuse for the looking. The looking was the excuse for the song. The song was the door. He has just walked through it. 3 nights pass. They pass the way nights pass for a person who has lit a fuse. Too fast in the body, too slow on the clock. On Monday morning, the dress arrives at Hwin's apartment in Hanamdong in a replacement box from the Paris atelier. It is not the same dress. It is a better dress. A note in Beck's handwriting, 3 words long, accompanies it. Hwin reads the note once and then burns it in the sink, because Hwin is not stupid, and Hwin has understood that the dress is not the apology. The dress is the dismissal. On Tuesday afternoon, Pio asks Zola, in the corridor between the dry store and the wine cellar, whether she has family in Seoul. He does not look at her when he asks. She says no. He nods once, the nod of a man entering a piece of information into a private ledger he will not show her, and walks on. The mini payoff she has been waiting for, planted in the kitchen on Friday night, lands here. Pio, who is afraid, is also a man with his own debt to settle. She does not know yet what the debt is. She will. On Wednesday evening, a man she does not know approaches her at the bus stop near her apartment. He is wearing the wrong shoes for a man who lives in this neighborhood. Too soft, too quiet. A man who walks in rooms with carpet. He stands beside her for the length of 1 bus cycle. He does not speak. When her bus arrives, he says, in English, "Mr. Bayek would like to know the name of the village your mother was from." Then he steps back. Then he is gone. Zola gets on the bus. She rides 3 stops past her own. She walks home a different way. She does not turn around. The question is not a question. The question is a measurement. Beck is checking how deep the song goes. Beck is checking whether the lullaby is the kind of thing one hears in a hotel kitchen by coincidence, or the kind of thing one hears in a hotel kitchen because a brother was humming it 12 feet from a private elevator that did not record its passengers. She decides, sitting on her radiator floor on Wednesday night, that the answer she will give is the truth. Not because honesty is a virtue. Because the truth, told at the correct angle, cuts deeper than any lie she could afford. On Thursday morning, 11 years to the day, give or take a calendar's grace, from the morning Kofi did not walk out, she walks into a building in Yoedo that houses the sole office of an Antwerp-based diamond grading authority. She has not entered this building before. She has been preparing to enter this building for 14 months. In the building, on the 7th floor, she sits across from a man named Ajay, who is Ghanaian, who is 61, who knew her father, who has known for 9 of the last 14 months that this conversation was going to happen, who has been waiting for it the way a witness waits for a subpoena. Ajay slides a folder across the table. The folder is thin. Inside the folder is a single page. The single page is a photocopy of a customs declaration filed at Incheon Airport in April of the year Kofi died. The declaration was filed by a courier in the employ of a logistics subsidiary, then majority owned by Baek Hyun-soo. The declaration lists a single item of cargo: a leather portfolio, weight 1.2 kilograms, contents declared as documents, commercial. The signature line of the declaration is signed by a man whose name has been redacted in the photocopy. But Ajay has, in pencil, in the margin, in Twi, written the name back in. The name is Pyo Jin-ho. Zola reads the name. She reads it twice. She does not lift her face for a long moment, because if she lifts her face, she will give Ajay something she has not yet earned the right to give him, which is the look of a person who has just been handed the second plant of a 2-plant reveal, and who has just understood that the maitre d' at Hwin, the man who has not met her eyes since Friday, was, 11 years and 1 month ago, the courier who carried Kofi's diamond ledger from a hotel in Accra to a private vault in Seoul. Pyo's debt is not to her. Pyo's debt is to himself. Pyo, the night of the wine, looked at her and understood that she had not spilled by accident, and Pyo understood. Because Pyo has been waiting 11 years for someone, anyone, to walk into Hwin carrying the right song, that the fuse he himself lit in Accra was finally, after a decade of dormancy, about to burn back to his own hand. Ajay says, in Twi, very softly, "What do you need from me, daughter?" Zola says, "I need you to tell me what is on Mr. Bayek's calendar 3 Saturdays from now." Ajay does not blink. Ajay is a man who has worked in rooms adjacent to Bayek's rooms for 2 decades. And Ajay has spent the last 14 months becoming the kind of man whose calendar inquiries do not echo. Ajay opens a second folder. The second folder is thicker. 3 Saturdays from now, Baek Hyun-soo's only daughter, Baek Yuna, 26 years old, a Juilliard-trained cellist, the single human being on the planet, Baek Hyun-soo, is documented to have wept in the presence of, will marry the youngest son of a chairman of a competing house at the Shilla Hotel in Junggu. The guest list is 240. The press will not be present, but 4 ambassadors will. The ceremony will be conducted under conditions Bayek has personally specified, including the rule that no member of the catering staff will be permitted to address any member of the wedding party by name. Zola asks Ajay, "Who is catering the wedding?" Ajay says, "Hwin." This is the antagonist's specific vulnerability. It is not his empire. It is not his merger. It is a Saturday in 3 weeks at the Shilla, where his daughter will walk down an aisle in front of 4 ambassadors, and where the kitchen will be run by Pyo Jin-ho, and where the water at the head table will be poured. Because Baek has personally requested it, and Baek does not know yet that he has personally requested it, by Zola Mensah. Zola closes the folder. She thanks Ajay in Twi. She walks out of the building in Uido at 11:42 in the morning. On the sidewalk, in the cold, pale Seoul light, she does something she has not done in 11 years. She hums all 4 bars. A passing student turns her head, hearing something she does not recognize, and then turns away. Zola walks on. The fuse is lit at both ends now. She has 3 weeks. The first move is not the wine. The wine, you understand now, was reconnaissance. The first move is a conversation she has with Pyo Jin-ho in the wine cellar of Hwin on the following Friday night, between the fish course and the meat course with the door closed. She does not threaten him. Threats are for people who have not done their reading. She places, on the seller's tasting counter, a photocopy of the customs declaration. She places it face up. She does not say his name. She does not say her brother's name. She lets the paper say both names for her. Pio looks at the paper for the length of time it takes a man to understand that his 11-year sleep is over. Then Pio looks up at her, and Pio, for the first time since Friday, meets her eyes. He says, "What do you want?" She says, "I want the wedding." He says, "You will not survive the wedding." She says, "I have not been surviving for 11 years. I have been waiting. I want the wedding, Piosi. I want the head table. I want the water. I want 1 minute alone with Yunashi between the ceremony and the reception." He says, "What will you do with 1 minute?" She says, "I will hum." Pio stares at her. Pio, who carried a leather portfolio of his employer's most carefully erased crime out of a hotel in Accra, when he was 31 years old and not yet a maitre d', who has lived 11 years inside the small, careful house of his own complicity, who has watched his employer's daughter grow up across the soft middle distance of catered events, and who has been quietly, privately, ashamed in her presence at everyone. Pio understands what Zola is going to do. She is not going to tell Yuna that her father killed a man. She is going to hum, in the bride's hearing, in the 60 seconds between the ceremony and the reception, 4 bars of a Twi lullaby. And then she is going to wait. And Yuna, who has, somewhere in the deep undersilt of her childhood, heard this exact song once before, on a Sunday afternoon in her father's study when she was 8 years old and not supposed to be there, played from a cassette recorder her father did not know was running, recorded from a microphone in a hotel conference room in Accra on a Thursday in March, which her father has kept in a locked drawer for 19 years, because he is, beneath everything, sentimental about evidence. Yuna will recognize it. And Yuna will ask her father, on the most public day of his life, in front of 4 ambassadors, where she has heard it before. And Baek Hyun-soo, who has not lied to his daughter once in 26 years, this is the rule of the only relationship in his life he has not corrupted, and the staff of Hwin know it the way priests know catechism, will be unable, in the moment, to lie. Pio says, very quietly, "How do you know about the cassette?" Zola says, "I don't. You just told me." Pio closes his eyes. The mini payoff lands like a glass set on stone. Zola has, in a single breath, confirmed a piece of evidence she had only suspected, and Pio has, in a single breath, become hers. He opens his eyes. He looks older than he did 90 seconds ago. He says, "I will get you the head table." She says, "And the water." He says, "And the water?" She says, "Thank you, Piosi." He says, "Don't thank me. Don't ever thank me. I am not on your side. I am on the side of being able to sleep one night without the sound of your brother humming in a kitchen I should not have been in. That is not the same side as yours, but it is the same direction. Tonight." She nods. She does not say thank you again. She picks up the photocopy. She tucks it back inside her apron. When she returns to the floor, Baek Hyun-soo is at table 3. He is alone tonight. Hyun is not coming back. He watches Zola cross the room with the water pitcher in her right hand. And when she reaches his table, he lifts one finger. The smallest gesture in his vocabulary. The gesture that has, in 19 years on this floor, never been made in this direction. And he says, in a voice pitched for her ear alone, "Pour." She pours. The pitcher does not touch the rim of the glass. The water rises, 3/4. She sets the pitcher down. She does not hum. She does not need to. He has already heard it. He is listening now for what comes next. He says, "Your mother's village." She says, Bonwire, sir. North of Kumasi. They weave kente there. He says, I have been to Bonwire. She says, I know, sir. A second passes. Baek Hyun-soo, who has not been surprised in a public room in 19 years, is surprised. He does not show it. The surprise registers, instead, in the smallest possible delay. A beat, a half beat, before he lifts his water glass and drinks. He drinks the whole glass. He sets it down. He does not refill it. For the first time in 19 years on a Friday night at Hwin, Baek Hyun-soo has allowed another human being to pour his water and has drunk what they poured. Pyo, watching from the alcove, understands what he has just witnessed. Pyo understands that Baek has just accepted, in the only language he speaks, a wager. Pyo understands that the wager is, I will let you pour. I will drink. And on the day I find out who you are, I will return the gesture in kind. Zola walks back to the kitchen, and the kitchen door swings open at exactly the correct angle, and behind her, in a quiet street in Seongbuk-gu, where the street lamps do not buzz because someone pays for them not to, two men in dark coats are already walking, in opposite directions, away from Hwin, because Baek has, with the lift of one finger, called off the watch. She has just been given 3 weeks of running room. She will not waste a single one of them. The countermove arrives on Tuesday. It arrives in the form of a woman. Her name is Song Mira. She is 44 years old. She is, on her published resume, an art consultant for a foundation in Itaewon. She is, on no resume that has ever been printed, the person Baek Hyun-soo employs to find out what a problem actually is, before he decides whether the problem requires solving. She does not come to Hwin. Hwin is not a place where one is approached. She comes to the small Ethiopian cafe in Itaewon, where Zola has her coffee on Tuesday mornings before her shift, and she sits down across from Zola without asking, the way a woman with the right kind of authority sits down across from a woman she intends to weigh. Song Mira says, May I? Zola says, You already have. Song Mira smiles. It is not a warm smile, but it is not cold either. It is the smile of a woman who respects in advance the labor it took to get to this table. She says, I have read your file. Zola says, I would have been disappointed if you hadn't. Song Mira says, There are 2 versions of your file. One is on paper, the other is in Mr. Ajay's head. I have not yet read the second one. I am hoping to read it from you. Zola says nothing. Song Mira says, Your brother was a competitor. He was small, he was clean. He was about to become inconvenient. Mr. Baek did not kill him. Mr. Baek made a phone call, and a man Mr. Baek had not yet met made a decision, and a man neither of them had ever met carried the decision out. The chain is 4 links long. The court that would hear this case does not exist. The country that would extradite for it has not been invented. I am telling you this because I respect you, and because I want you to understand that the wedding is not a court. Zola says, I am not bringing a case to a court. Song Mira says, I know, you are bringing a song to a daughter. A silence. Zola says, What do you want, Song-si? Song Mira places a small envelope on the table. She does not push it across. She lets it sit equidistant between them. She says, Mr. Baek would like to make you an offer. Inside this envelope is a sum. The sum is generous. The sum is to be understood as a final payment on a debt Mr. Baek does not officially acknowledge. The sum is contingent on your absence from the Shilla Hotel on the 23rd. You may keep your position at Hwin. You may keep your apartment. You may keep your hum. You may not, on the 23rd, be in the same building as Baek Yuna. Zola looks at the envelope. She does not pick it up. She says, How much? Song Mira says, Enough that you would never need to pour another glass of water in your life. Zola says, I do not want to stop pouring water. Song Mira says, I thought you might say that. Zola says, how long have you known? Song Mira says, about you, personally, 11 months, about the song, 11 years. We have been listening for it in every kitchen in Seoul. I want you to understand something, Miss Mensa. I respect what you have built. I respect that you have built it without violence. I respect that your weapon is 4 bars long. But Mr. Bayek's daughter is not the link in the chain you think she is. If you hum that song in her hearing, you will not destroy Mr. Bayek. You will destroy a 26-year-old woman who has done nothing to your brother. You will spend the rest of your life, and I mean this clinically, not as a threat, knowing that the last move in your 11-year game was made on the body of a stranger. Mr. Beck is offering you a different ending. I am asking you, woman to woman, to consider it. Zola sits with this. She sits with it for a long minute. Song Mira does not fill the minute. Song Mira, like Zola, knows the value of a held silence. Finally, Zola says, will you tell Mr. Bayek something for me? Song Mira says, yes. Zola says, tell him that I am not going to hum the song to his daughter. Song Mira's face does not move, but something behind it does. Zola says, tell him I am going to hum it to him, at the head table, in front of his daughter. And his daughter will recognize it on her own, because he kept the cassette, and an 8-year-old who hears a song once in a locked study remembers it for life. Tell him I am giving him 3 weeks to decide what he wants his daughter to learn from him and what he wants her to learn from me. Tell him the offer in this envelope is not a payment, it is a confession. And tell him I do not accept confessions through intermediaries. Song Mira looks at her for a long time. Then Song Mira does something Zola did not expect. Song Mira picks up the envelope, and she puts it back inside her coat, and she stands up, and she bows. Not the small, dismissive bow of a professional, but the slightly deeper bow, 3 degrees deeper, that one woman gives another when she has been outclassed in a conversation she came to win. She says, I will tell him. She leaves. Zola finishes her coffee. Her hand is steady. Her hand has always been the steady part. The unsteady part is older, and the unsteady part, for the first time in 11 years, is beginning to settle. Walking back to her apartment, she passes a music shop in Itaewon, and in the window of the music shop there is a cassette recorder, second-hand, 200,000 won. She stops. She looks at it. She does not buy it. But she remembers, in the small private theater of her chest, that the cassette in Baek Hyun-soo's locked drawer is a thing that can be played twice. Once by him, in private, for 19 years. And once, perhaps, in public. She has 2 weeks and 4 days. The Shilla Hotel, 23rd of the month, 4:11 in the afternoon. The ceremony has ended. The cellist, the bride is, by training, the cellist. She has played at her own ceremony the second movement of a Kodali suite, alone, for 3 minutes and 41 seconds, and the 4 ambassadors and the 236 other guests have understood, watching her, that the room they are in is a room arranged around a single beloved daughter. The cellist is now in the antechamber off the main ballroom, where the photographs will be taken before the reception. The antechamber is paneled in walnut. The antechamber has 1 door in and 1 door out. The antechamber has a small mahogany table at its center, on which a water service has been placed. The water service has been arranged by Pyo Jin-ho. The water is to be poured by a member of the Hwin staff, who has, by Mr. Bayek's personal request, served him at table 3 on Friday evenings. Zola enters at 4:13. She is in the black and white Hwin uniform, the one with the high collar. Her hair is pinned. Her hands are at her sides. She carries a single cut crystal pitcher. Yuna is at the window. Her dress is a column of ivory silk that does not weigh enough to crease. She is alone. The photographer has stepped out for 90 seconds. Pio has, at 4:12 and 22 seconds, asked the photographer in the corridor whether he could spare a moment for a lighting question that does not actually exist. 90 seconds is what Zola asked for. 90 seconds is what she has. Yuna turns from the window. She sees Zola. She smiles, the rehearsed, gentle smile of a young woman who has been smiling at staff her entire life and has been raised, by a careful father, never to look through them. Yuna says, in Korean, "Thank you for coming, Iani. The water is on the table." Zola crosses to the table. She lifts the pitcher. She begins to pour. The water rises in the first glass. 3/4. She hums. 4 bars. The climb. The settle. The question. The name. She does not look up while she hums. She lets the song be the only thing in the room. She finishes the first glass. She sets the pitcher down. She steps back. She folds her hands. Yuna has gone very still. The stillness is the stillness of an 8-year-old in a locked study on a Sunday afternoon 19 years ago. The stillness is the stillness of a cassette tape played twice and then put away and then never spoken of. The stillness is the stillness of a daughter who has just understood, before her conscious mind has caught up with her body, that something in her childhood was not what she was told it was. Yuna says, in a voice that is not the rehearsed voice, "Where did you learn that?" Zola says, "From my brother, SSI. He hummed it in a hotel in Accra." A pause. Yuna says, "When?" Zola says, "On a Thursday in March, 11 years ago. He was 29. His name was Kofi Mensah. He did not walk out of the hotel." Yuna does not move. Yuna's hand has come up, of its own quiet authority, to the base of her throat. Yuna says, "I have heard this song before." Zola says, "I know, SSI." Yuna says, "Where?" Zola says, "I think you know where. I think you have known for a long time and have not yet said it to yourself. I am sorry, SSI. I am very sorry that the day this becomes a question for you is today. I waited 11 years to ask it. I tried to find a day that was not yours. There was no other day. I am sorry." The door opens. Baek Hyun-soo is in the doorway. He has been in the doorway, it turns out, for the last 11 seconds. He has heard the last 2 sentences. Pyo, behind him, has his hands folded and his eyes lowered, and Pyo is not breathing. Baek looks at his daughter. His daughter looks at her father. Zola steps back 1 step, against the wall, and folds her hands behind her, and becomes, for the first time since Friday, invisible again. She does not need to be the subject of this room. The room has, in the last 40 seconds, become its own subject. Yuna says, in Korean, to her father, "Appa, I have heard this song before. Where?" Baek does not lie to his daughter. It is the rule of the only relationship in his life he has not corrupted, and the rule holds, even now, even here, even in front of a Ghanaian waitress and a maitre d', who carried a portfolio out of a hotel in Accra and 4 ambassadors waiting in a ballroom on the other side of a walnut door. The rule holds. The rule, in fact, is the only thing in Baek Hyun-soo's life that has ever held. He says, in Korean, to his daughter, "In my study, when you were 8, you were not supposed to be there." Yuna says, "What was on the cassette?" Baek says, after a long pause, "A man who is no longer alive." Yuna says, "Did you kill him, Appa?" Baek says, "No." Yuna says, "Did you cause him to die?" A silence opens in the antechamber the size of 11 years. Baek says, "Yes." The mini payoff arrives not as triumph, but as weight. Zola, against the wall, feels the word yes land inside her chest the way a stone lands at the bottom of a well. Not loud, finally heard. Her brother has been confessed, not in a court, not in a deposition, in a walnut-paneled antechamber, by the man who placed the call, to the daughter that man loves more than the chain of 4 links he has spent a lifetime hiding behind. It is not justice. There is no justice for Kofi. There is only this. The man who caused him to die has, on the most public day of his life, used the word yes in front of his daughter. The fuse has burned to the end. Yuna looks at her father for a very long time. She does not cry. She does not crumple. She is her father's daughter, and her father's daughter does not perform her feelings in rooms with witnesses. She turns, slowly, to Zola. She looks at Zola with an expression Zola will think about for the rest of her life. Not hatred, not even anger, but a recognition. The recognition of one woman by another across a body that belongs to neither of them. Yuna says, in English, because English is the only language in this room that belongs to neither her father nor her father's house. Was your brother kind? Zola says, yes, S.I., he was very kind. He hummed in kitchens. Yuna nods once. Then Yuna turns to her father, and Yuna says, in Korean, in the voice she will use to address him for the rest of his life, I will marry today, Appa. Because 240 people have come, and because Min-jun has done nothing to deserve a ruined wedding. I will dance with you, because it is the dance my mother arranged before she died. And tomorrow morning, I will come to your study, and you will play me the cassette, the whole cassette. And then, I will decide what kind of daughter I am going to be. Beck says, Yuna ya. Yuna says, tomorrow morning, Appa. She walks past him. She walks past Pio. She walks into the corridor toward the ballroom where 4 ambassadors are waiting, and she walks the way her mother taught her to walk into rooms her father owns, as if she owns them more. The door closes behind her. Beck and Zola are alone, except for Pio, who is not in this room in any way that matters. Beck says, in Korean, you did not hum it to her? You hummed it to me. Zola says, yes, sir. Beck says, you said you would. Zola says, I keep my word, sir. Beck looks at her for a long moment. Then Beck does something Zola did not predict, and would not have predicted, and will think about for the rest of her life, with a complicated weather she does not yet have language for. Beck crosses to the table. He lifts the pitcher. He pours a glass of water with his own hand. He sets the pitcher down. He turns. He extends the glass to her. He says, drink. She takes the glass. She drinks. She drinks the whole glass. She sets it down. He says, very quietly, your brother, humming, at the breakfast. Was it for me, or was it for himself? She says, for himself, sir. He hummed because he was nervous. He hummed because our mother used to hum it to him when he was afraid. He was 29 years old, and he was about to sit down in a room with a man he had been warned about, and he was humming the only thing he had ever known to hum when he was afraid. He was not threatening you, sir. He was a boy in a kitchen, being afraid. Bak closes his eyes for the length of one breath. When he opens them, something in them has changed. It is not remorse. Bak Yun-soo is not, and will never be, a man capable of remorse in any shape his daughter would recognize. But it is something adjacent. It is the look of a man who has just learned that the small detail he used 19 years ago to justify a decision. The humming, which his security advisor told him at the time, was a recognition signal, a coded message, a tradecraft cue from a rival house, was in fact only a frightened young man humming his mother's lullaby into the rim of a coffee cup. Beck says, I see. Zola says, I will leave Hwin tonight, sir. Beck says, yes. Zola says, I will not come to your study tomorrow morning. Whatever Eunice does is hers. Beck says, Yes. Zola says, I would like one thing, sir, before I go. Beck says, name it. She says, I would like the cassette. There is a long silence. Beck says, after tomorrow morning. She says, yes, sir, after tomorrow morning. Whatever she does not need of it. I would like to bury it. In Bonwire, above Kumasi, where they weave kente. Beck says, it will be sent. She bows. The bow is 3 degrees deeper than a waitress's bow. The bow is the bow of one human being acknowledging the rule of another's daughter on a Saturday afternoon in a walnut room. He returns it 1 millimeter shallower than her own. Then she walks out. Pyo, in the corridor, is waiting for her. Pyo says, in Korean, it is done. Zola says, it is done for you, Pyo-si. It is begun for me. She walks out of the Shilla Hotel into the cold, pale Seoul afternoon. A black car is waiting. The car is not for her. The car is for the next thing. She walks past it. It is not fate. It is a Tuesday. 3 Tuesdays after the wedding, in a small apartment in Mapogu, Zola Mensa is making coffee. The kitchen is narrow. The window faces an alley. The radiator ticks. On the counter, next to the pour-over, sits a small padded envelope that arrived by courier on the previous Friday. Inside the envelope is a cassette tape. The cassette tape is unlabeled. The cassette tape has not been played by its new owner and will not be. Beside the envelope is a plane ticket. Incheon to Accra, by way of Doha. The flight leaves on Saturday morning. Zola will be on it. She will travel to Kumasi. She will travel from Kumasi to Bonwire, where they weave kente. She will, in a cemetery on a hill above Accra that overlooks the road to the airport, bury a cassette tape in a grave that has been waiting 11 years for a body and will, at last, accept a voice instead. She does not yet know what she will do after. She has a letter on her counter from Yuna. The letter is 2 paragraphs long. The letter is in English. The letter does not contain forgiveness because forgiveness is not the daughter's to give. The letter contains, in the 2nd paragraph, a sentence Zola has read 17 times. My father has resigned from the operating committee of the house. He has not been arrested. He will not be arrested. He has done other things he is not paying for. But he is not, any longer, the man who pours his own water in rooms where you are not. I think that is something. I do not think it is enough. I am writing to you because I would like, someday, to hear the song again from the beginning. When I am ready, I will tell you when. The letter is signed, Yuna. Zola folds the letter. She places it in a drawer. She pours her coffee. She stands at the window. She hums. 4 bars, the climb, the settle, the question, the name. The kitchen does not swing at the wrong angle. The water glass on the counter does not move. The fuse has burned to its end, and the end was not an explosion, and the end was not a courtroom, and the end was not a body returned. The end was a daughter walking past her father into a ballroom, and a father drinking from a glass another woman poured. The end was a song, allowed at last to be a song again. She drinks her coffee. She watches the alley. Somewhere, 11 years deep, a Thursday in March closes its eyes. There is a thing I want you to understand. Before the lights come back up in whatever room you are sitting in, Zola Mensa did not get justice. The country that would have given her justice has not been invented. The court that would have heard her brother's case does not exist. Baek Hyun-soo will live a long life. He will see his grandchildren. He will die, eventually, in a private room with a view of a garden, of a heart that has done more work than it was ever entitled to. The chain of 4 links between his telephone and her brother's body will never be unbuckled in any room with a flag in it. What she got instead was smaller, and, in a way I am still trying to write down for you, larger. She got a man in a walnut-paneled antechamber to say the word yes in front of his daughter. She got a daughter to ask a question her father could not refuse. She got a cassette tape into a grave in Bonwire. She got her brother's name said aloud, in Korean, in a room where his name had been a redaction for 11 years. She got Pyo Jin-ho one night of sleep he had not had in a decade. She got Song Mira to bow 3 degrees deeper than the bow she came to give. She got, at the end of it all, to hum her mother's lullaby out a kitchen window on a Tuesday morning, in her own apartment, in a city she came to on her own terms, with her own hands steady. I want to ask you 2 things, and then I will let you go. First, what would you have done with 11 years? Would you have learned the language? Would you have crossed the continent? Would you have poured the water for 214 Fridays without spilling, waiting for the right ear to turn? Tell me, in the comments. I want to know who you become when you are given a wound and a long fuse. Second, when Zola walked into the antechamber on the 23rd, she had a choice. She could have hummed the song to the daughter. She could have made the daughter the body the song landed on. She chose instead to hum it to the father and let the daughter recognize it on her own. Was she right? Was the mercy she showed Baek Yuna a mercy she owed her? Or was it a mercy that came at her brother's expense? I will not tell you what I think. I want to know what you think. If you stayed with me to the last word, and I know who you are, the ones who stay, leave the words the hum in the comments below, so I can find you. Subscribe if you have not. Like the video, ring the bell. The next story is already humming under my hand, and when it pours, you will want to be in the room. Kailov, Afro-Korean.